these are some of the worst human psychological experiments in history. Some of these are pretty messed up, so get ready, grab a stuffed animal. Let me pick one. Milkshake. Always love a good milkshake. Comment below your favorite milkshake flavor. Mine's chocolate or strawberry. I don't know. Anyways, let's do this. The monster study. That is not a good name for a pleasant study. In 1939, 22 orphans living in Davenport, Iowa, became the test subjects of Wendell Johnson and Mary Tudor, two researchers at the University of Iowa. The study was about stuttering, but it didn't go quite the way you might think. The children were separated into two groups. Members of one group received positive speech therapy and was consistently praised for their speech fluency. The other group received negative speech therapy, which included being belittled for any speech imperfection they happened to make. In the end, children in the second group who spoke normally before the experiment developed speech problems that they reportedly retained for the rest of their lives. So they messed up these kids forever. Johnson and Tudor never published the results of their study out of fear that they would be compared to the human experimenters among the Nazis. Here's a thought. If your main concern is that you're gonna be compared to Nazis, literal human torture, maybe rethink what you're about to do. That's just me. Stanford prison experiment, probably one of the most famous human experiments that a lot of people know about, and famous in a bad way. So the Stanford prison experiment took place in August of 1971. So that was actually not that long ago. The purpose of the experiment was to study the causes of conflict between prisoners and those who guard them. Well, that's common sense that they're not gonna like each other. 24 male students were randomly assigned the role of either guard or prisoner and then set up according to their role in a specifically designed model prison located in the basement of the psychology building on Stanford's campus. It soon became apparent that those who had been given the role of guard were taking their job very seriously. They had a power trip. They began to enforce harsh measures and subjected their prisoners to various degrees of psychological torture. If that's surprising, perhaps it's even more surprising that many of the prisoners in the experiment simply accepted the abuse. The authoritarian measures adopted by the guards became so extreme that the experiment was abruptly stopped just after 6 days. There's actually a movie that was made based off of this experiment. I watched it. Not all of it, but it gives you a pretty good idea of the extent of the torture that these kids went through by the guards. And it's pretty bad. This does not give you nearly enough detail. Little Albert. Albert is such a cute name for a baby, but a grown man, I'm just like, ew, your name's Albert? Anyways, those involved in psychology likely already know of the name John Watson. Watson is known as the father of behaviorism and often used orphans in his various experiments. Why are they using orphans for all of this? In one well-known and especially unethical experiment, Watson used a 9-month-old orphan known as Little Albert. At first, Little Albert was exposed to a variety of sights and sounds, including rabbits, monkeys, burning newspaper, and masks of all sorts. Just to clarify, they did not physically hurt him that we know of. At least not with what this is telling me. In the experiment's second phase, Watson introduced Little Albert to a white rat. As with the other things, Little Albert didn't show any fear of the rat. That is insane. I would be scared. That is until Watson began making loud noises with a steel bar anytime Albert touched the animal. Not surprisingly, the presence of the rat turned distressing, because he associated it with these terrifying, sudden, loud noises. Soon, Little Albert expressed fear over anything fluffy and or white, ultimately proving Watson's hypothesis that fear could be conditioned. Yeah, that's common sense. You don't traumatize a baby for the rest of his life of anything white and fluffy. That's a lot. He can literally never have a husky. Though 27-year-old Emma Eckstein, sorry I don't know how to say that, only sought the help of Sigmund Freud for stomach ailments and a slight depression, the famed Austrian doctor decided to unethically use the young woman in a series of experiments. Freud repeatedly told Emma that she was being treated for hysteria and something else that was adult that I had to blur out. It wasn't anything bad, this guy's literally crazy. But these were two habits that were then considered signs of ill mental health. Back then, they said a woman had hysteria if she just acted a little too emotional for a man's liking. They thought she was being dramatic, basically. And it was all fake. It was just women being a little emotional, which is totally human and normal. But no, it's hysteria and it needs to be cured because she's a woman who spoke out too much. Anyways, in one notoriously disastrous treatment, Emma was given only drugs and a local anesthetic before the inside of her nose was cauterized. Freud continued to treat Emma for 3 years. He tortured her for 3 years. And exactly what his intentions were with the young woman remain unclear to this day. This guy was literally just having a field day. He just wanted to do random experiments to her because back then it was accepted. The Aversion Project. This guy ugly, I already know he's a sicko. During the apartheid era, sorry, don't know how to say that, I'm stupid, in South Africa, Army Colonel and psychologist Dr. Aubrey Levin was put in charge of the curing of the country's homosexuals. Guys, they used to see homosexuality as an illness. They literally thought you were physically sick and they could cure it. Thousands of homosexuals were imprisoned at the military hospital near Pretoria. While there, they were subjected to electroconvulsive aversion therapy meant to reorientate them. During this cruel therapy, homosexual men were shown pictures of naked males, then encouraged to fantasize before being subjected to severe shocks. So they would associate being romantically involved with another man with painful shocks. So it traumatizes them from ever doing that with someone of the same gender. When apartheid finally ended, Levin left South Africa to avoid being named an abuser of human rights. He immigrated to Canada and currently works in a teaching hospital. How is this guy not in prison? He committed war crimes against humanity. Are you kidding me? Sadly, this happens a lot. A lot of these people from back in the day, decades ago, are getting away with this stuff because it's hard to uncover evidence for old war crimes from stuff that used to be socially accepted. This was normal. Operation Midnight Climax. In the 1950s, the CIA sponsored a mind control research project it dubbed Operation Midnight Climax. The purpose of the operation was to study the effects of LSD on people. And so non-consenting individuals in San Francisco and New York were lured by CIA-paid prostitutes to safe houses, where they were slipped mind-altering substances like LSD, then monitored from behind a one-way glass. Over the next decade, the operation provided the government with extensive knowledge on topics such as mind-altering drugs, surveillance technology, and even sexual blackmail. Fortunately for those unwitting test subjects, Operation Midnight Climax was shut down in 1965. So this was let on for over 10 years. Guys, there are literally so many secret projects that were done by the government to study so many things, especially mind control and drugs, that were done illegally. You have no idea. Literally, there are so many stories. I'll do a whole video about it. Project MK Ultra. Isn't that the title of one of the Iron Man movies? From 1953 to 1973, the US government conducted a series of unethical experiments meant to figure out the best ways to manipulate the mental states of citizens. Mind control. They literally studied this for decades. And then to develop chemical materials capable of employment in clandestine operations. Collectively, the experiments were called Project MK Ultra, Iron Man, and were officially sponsored by the CIA. Each experiment involved subjecting unknowing Americans to things like mind-altering drugs, sensory deprivation, verbal and physical abuse, extreme isolation, hypnosis, and other forms of torture. Subjects were found at universities and in hospitals and prisons. Fortunately, it was shut down by Congress. Eventually, probably when they got caught. They're not sorry they did it. They just do it for as long as they can get away with it, and then they shut it down and move on to something else secret. The Pit of Despair. This is not making me feel optimistic. Harry Harlow is the comparative psychologist behind the Pit of Despair, an unethical experiment that used monkeys to learn about clinical depression. The government and beauty agencies, people that make makeup, have used animals to test so many things illegally. They torture them. That's why you should try to buy your stuff vegan. That's not just with dieting, that's also with how some things are made. It just shows they didn't torture animals to make this product. Harlow collected a group of monkeys ranging in age from 3 months to 3 years old, knowing full well that juvenile monkeys stay with their mothers for longer than most mammals. Harlow isolated his young test subjects in small, lonely chambers. Every monkey in Harlow's experiment had already bonded with its mother, and therefore the monkeys soon became extremely depressed. Yeah, because you're separating it from its mother. Animal, human, anyone would get sad. After a short amount of time, the monkeys stopped playing and interacting, and 2 of them even starved themselves to death by refusing to eat. Harlow's experiment was widely condemned as cruel and unnecessary, and most agreed that the results were common sense. Yeah, like many of these other experiments. These poor monkeys. Now I want a pet monkey. Do you think they would get along with my guinea pigs? No, I don't think so. They'd probably eat them. Oh, they're napping. I gotta be quiet now. So that's it for today's video. As always, please subscribe, turn on notifications, follow me on social media. Links are down below, and I'll see you tomorrow.